Thomas is a tank engine who lives at a big station on the island of Sodor. He's a cheeky little engine with 6 small wheels, a short stumpy funnel, a short stumpy boiler, and a short stumpy dome. He's a fussy little engine too, always pulling coaches about, ready for the big engines to take on long journeys. And when trains come in, he pulls the empty coaches away so that the big engines can go and rest. Thomas thinks no engine works as hard as he does. He loves playing tricks on them, including Gordon, the biggest and proudest engine of all. Thomas likes whistling rudely at him. "Wake up, lazy bones," he would say. "Why don't you work hard like me?" One day, after pulling the big express, Gordon had arrived back at the sidings very tired. He was just going to sleep when Thomas came up in his cheeky way. "Wake up, fat face! Do some hard work for a change! You can't catch me!" And off he ran, laughing. Instead of going to sleep again, Gordon thought of how he could get back at Thomas. One morning, Thomas wouldn't wake up. His driver and fireman couldn't make him start. His fire went out and there was not enough steam. It was nearly time for the express. People were waiting, but the coaches weren't ready. At last, Thomas started. "Oh dear," he yawned. He fussed into the station where Gordon was waiting. "Hurry up, you," said Gordon. "Hurry yourself," replied Thomas. Gordon began making his plan. "Yes," said Gordon, "I will." And almost before the coaches had stopped moving, Gordon reversed quickly and was coupled to the train. "Get in quickly, please," he whistled to the passengers. Thomas usually pushed behind the big trains to help them start, but he was always uncoupled first. This time, Gordon started so quickly they forgot to uncouple Thomas. Gordon's chance had come. Come on," puffed Gordon to the coaches. The train went faster and faster. Too fast for Thomas. He wanted to stop, but he couldn't. "Beep, beep! Stop! "Ha ha! Hurry!" laughed Gordon. You can't get away!" laughed the coaches. Poor Thomas was going faster than he had ever gone before. He was out of breath and his wheels hurt him, but he had to go on. "I shall never be the same again," he thought sadly. "My wheels will be quite worn out." At last they stopped at a station. Thomas was uncoupled and he felt very silly and exhausted. Next, he went on to a turntable, thinking of everyone laughing at him. And then he ran onto a siding out of the way. "Well, little Thomas," chuckled Gordon, "now you know what hard work means, don't you?" Poor Thomas couldn't answer. He had no breath. He just puffed slowly away to rest, and had a long drink. He went home very slowly, and was careful afterwards never to be cheeky to Gordon again. One day, Edward was in the shed where he lived with the other engines. They were all bigger than Edward and boasted about it. "The driver won't choose you again," said Gordon. "He wants strong engines like us." But the driver and fireman felt sorry for Edward. "Would you like to come out today?" "Oh, yes, please," said Edward. So they lit his fire, made lots of steam, and Edward puffed away. The other engines were very cross at being left behind. Edward worked hard all day. The coaches thought he was very kind, and the driver was very pleased. "I'm going out again tomorrow," Edward told the other engines that night. "What do you think of that?" But he didn't hear what they thought, for he was so tired and happy that he fell asleep at once. The next morning, Edward woke to find that nothing had changed. Gordon was still boasting. "You watch me, little Edward, as I rush through with the express. That will be a splendid sight for you. Goodbye, little Edward. Look out for me this afternoon." Edward went off to do some shunting. Edward liked shunting. It was fun playing with trucks. He would come up quietly and give them a push. Then he would stop, and the silly trucks would go bump into each other. "Oh!" they cried. "Whatever is happening?" Edward played till there were no more trucks to shunt. Then he stopped to rest. Presently, he heard a whistle. Gordon was very cross. Instead of nice shining coaches, he was pulling a lot of very dirty trucks. "A goods train! A goods train! A goods train!" he grumbled. "The shame of it! The shame of it! Oh, the shame of it!" Edward laughed and went to find some more trucks. Then there was trouble. "Gordon can't get up the hill," the porter called to Edward's driver. "Will you take Edward and push him up, please?" They found Gordon halfway up and very cross. His driver and fireman were talking to him severely. "You're not trying." "I can't do it," said Gordon. "The noisy trucks hold an engine back so." Edward's driver came up. "We've come to push." "No use at all," said Gordon. "You wait and see," replied Edward's driver. They brought the train back down to the bottom of the hill. "I'm ready," said Edward. "No good," grumbled Gordon. They pulled and pushed as hard as they could. "I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it," puffed Gordon. "I will do it. I will do it. I will do it," puffed Edward. Edward pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed as hard as ever he could, and almost before he realized it, Gordon found himself at the top of the hill. "I've done it! I've done it! I've done it!" he said proudly. He forgot all about kind Edward and didn't wait to say thank you. Edward was left out of breath and far behind. He ran on to the next station, and there he found that the driver and fireman were very pleased with him. The fireman gave him a nice long drink, and the driver said, "I'll get out my paint tomorrow and give you a beautiful coat of blue with red stripes. Then you'll be the smartest engine in the shed." Thomas the tank engine wouldn't stop being a nuisance. Night after night he kept the other engines awake. "I'm tired of pushing coaches. I want to see the world." The other engines didn't take much notice, for Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue. But one night, Edward came to the shed. He was a kind little engine and felt sorry for Thomas. "I've got some trucks to take home tomorrow. If you take them instead of me, I'll push coaches in the yard." "Thank you," said Thomas. "That will be nice." Next morning, Edward and Thomas asked their drivers, and when they said yes, Thomas ran off happily to find trucks. Now, trucks are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they are doing, and I'm sorry to say they play tricks on an engine who is not used to them. Edward knew all about trucks. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen. The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready. The guard blew his whistle. "Peep, peep," answered Thomas, and started off. But the trucks weren't ready. "Oh, oh, oh," they screamed. "Wait, Thomas, wait." But Thomas wouldn't wait. Come on," he puffed. "All right, don't fuss. All right, don't fuss," grumbled the trucks. Thomas began going faster and faster. "Whee!" he whistled as he rushed through Henry's tunnel. "Hurry, hurry," called Thomas. He was feeling very proud of himself, but the trucks grew crosser and crosser. At last, Thomas slowed down as he came to Gordon's Hill. "Steady now, steady," warned the driver. As they neared the top, he began to put on the brakes. We're stopping," called Thomas as he crested the hill. "No, no, no," answered the trucks, bumping into each other. Go on, go on." Before the driver could stop them, they had pushed Thomas down the hill and were rattling and laughing behind him. Poor Thomas tried hard to stop them from making him go too fast. Stop pushing," he hissed, but the trucks took no notice. Go on," they giggled in their silly way. "There's the station. Oh dear, what shall I do?" he cried. They rattled straight through and swerved into the goods yard. Thomas shut his eyes. "I must stop." Thomas halted with a sudden jerk. He opened his eyes to see that he had stopped just in front of the buffers. There watching him stood the Fat Controller. "Thomas, what are you doing here?" he asked. I've brought Edward's truck, sir," Thomas answered. "Why did you come in so fast?" I didn't mean to. I was pushed," said Thomas. "You've got a lot to learn about trucks then, little Thomas. After pushing them about here for a few weeks, you'll know almost as much about them as Edward. Then you'll be a really useful engine."